I hadn't been back to Willow Lane in nearly a decade, but the smell of pine and red clay hit me the moment I rolled down the window. Clarissa sat in the passenger seat, arms crossed, her usual look of detached irritation on full display. We didn't talk much on the drive down from Charleston. There wasn't much to say. Our father was dead, and now we had to sit through the formality of his will reading. 3 weeks ago, Thomas Whitaker's heart gave out while pruning the old pecan tree in his backyard. He was 72. No warning. No final words. Just gone. We weren't close. He wasn't cruel exactly, just distant. Ever since Mom died when I was 15, he seemed to stop trying, at parenting, at living. Clarissa moved out for college and never came back. I tried. I stayed around a bit longer, called on birthdays, offered to help around the house. But Dad only ever seemed to light up when Avery was around. Avery was our cousin, technically. She moved in during high school after her parents' divorce, and she never left. She was the golden girl, helpful, agreeable, and utterly fake. Dad thought she hung the moon. Clarissa and I knew better. The Whitaker house looked smaller than I remembered. The once white siding had faded to gray. Avery's new silver Lexus was parked out front, gleaming like it didn't belong here. I parked behind it and killed the engine. "You ready?" Clarissa asked. "No," I said, "but let's get it over with." Inside, the air was thick with lemon polish and old books. The lawyer, Mr. Denton, sat in the living room, a briefcase balanced on his knees. Avery perched near the fireplace, dressed in sleek black like she was auditioning for a soap opera. She didn't stand to greet us. Just flashed that thin, rehearsed smile. "Nora. Clarissa. Glad you could make it," Mr. Denton said with a nod. We sat. The couch cushions were as stiff as I remembered. Mr. Denton cleared his throat. "I'll keep this brief. Per the last will and testament of Thomas Whitaker." My stomach twisted. He read the usual formalities. Then he got to the point. "To my niece, Avery Monroe, for her years of care and companionship, I leave the house, all contents therein, the bank accounts at First Georgia Credit Union, the 1965 Ford F-100, and all remaining assets." I blinked. "What?" "To my daughters, Clarissa and Nora Whitaker." Here it comes, I thought. The land, maybe. The jewelry. Something. I leave my sincerest wishes for their future. And to Nora specifically, I leave this. He reached into the briefcase and pulled out a small envelope, yellowed at the edges. My name was written on the front in Dad's familiar, slanted handwriting. Clarissa stared, silent. I reached for the envelope with numb fingers. That was it. Avery's smirk widened. Mr. Denton snapped the folder shut and thanked us all for coming, like this had been a dinner party. I didn't speak. I didn't cry. I just stood up, turned around, and walked out the door. Outside, the Georgia sun glared down. I squinted, blinking hard. Clarissa followed close behind. "He left everything to her," she said in disbelief. "Everything. I don't want to talk about it." "But." I said I don't want to talk about it. We didn't. Back in the car, I clutched the envelope like it might disappear. My name. Just my name. No cruel words. No apologies. Just Nora Whitaker in black ink. When we got back to Charleston, I didn't open it right away. It sat on my kitchen table for 2 days. Every time I looked at it, my chest tightened. On the 3rd day, I poured a glass of wine, sat down, and peeled it open. Inside was a single piece of lined paper. Dad's handwriting again. "Nora. I know I didn't say this often, or ever, but I was proud of you. Avery was there when you both weren't. I thought I owed her something for that. But I left you something too. The key is in the envelope. You'll know where it goes." I stared at the small brass key taped to the bottom of the letter. No clue. No address. Just that cryptic final message. I turned it over in my hand. Familiar, somehow. Smooth from use. It clicked. The old art studio. It had been Mom's space, a detached building behind the house where she painted, sculpted, created. After she died, Dad locked it up. I hadn't seen inside since I was a teenager. I didn't tell Clarissa. I didn't text Avery. I just drove back to Willow Lane 2 days later. I parked on the gravel path that led behind the house. The backyard was overgrown now, ivy curling around the old bird bath, weeds pushing through the brick walkway. The studio stood like a relic, its white paint peeling, windows clouded with dust. I slid the key into the rusted padlock. It turned with a satisfying click. The door creaked open. The scent of turpentine and old wood hit me instantly. Light filtered in through the cracks in the ceiling. Dust floated in the air like memories. There were still canvases leaning against the far wall. A stool sat near the window, untouched. And in the corner, a locked chest. I recognized it from years ago. Dad used to keep old tools in it. The key worked there too. Inside was a folder. Legal documents, notarized, sealed. I skimmed the pages, and my heart stopped. A property deed. Not for the house. Not for the studio. For the entire Whitaker estate. In my name. Dated 3 months before he died. I sat down on the stool, hands trembling. He hadn't left me nothing. He'd left me everything. The bank was tucked in a quiet corner of Savannah, Georgia, an old, red brick building with ivy crawling up the side and golden letters faded by time. It didn't look like the kind of place that held secrets. But I clutched the key like it was a weapon. Safe deposit boxes? I asked the teller, trying to sound casual. She glanced at my ID, nodded, and led me through a locked door into a dim room with rows of metal boxes. Box 318. I slid the key into the lock. My fingers shook as the latch clicked open. Inside was a thick folder, a flash drive, and a small, velvet jewelry box. I opened the velvet box first. Inside was a gold locket, the one my mother used to wear before she died. I hadn't seen it in over 20 years. My throat tightened. I set it gently aside and opened the folder. It was packed with papers, legal documents, financial records, and, to my surprise, birth certificates. I froze. One of them was mine. The next one was Clarissa's. And the third, Avery's. Only, it wasn't listed under Avery Dean. Her birth name was Avery Blake, and her mother was Janine Blake. That wasn't our family. My father wasn't even listed on her certificate. What the hell? I flipped through more documents. There were handwritten notes from my father, detailing strange transactions Avery made on his behalf, real estate transfers, withdrawals from joint accounts, even forged signatures. She'd taken tens of thousands of dollars over the last few years. One note had just 2 words written in Dad's scratchy handwriting. She lied. Suddenly, the flash drive made sense. I plugged it into my laptop the second I got home. Inside were scanned letters, voicemails, and surveillance footage, my father's way of documenting everything. There were recordings of Avery arguing with him, pressuring him to change the will. One voicemail chilled me to the bone. "If you don't do this, I'll make sure Nora and Clarissa never get a cent. You know what I'm capable of." It wasn't just manipulation. It was blackmail. My father didn't leave her the estate because he loved her, he was cornered. But somehow, he trusted me to fix it. Me, the daughter he barely spoke to. I didn't know whether to feel honored or angry. I stared at the screen, then at the documents spread across my kitchen table. If this was real, and everything in my gut told me it was, I couldn't let her get away with it. I called Clarissa. "I need to talk to you. It's important." We met at a cafe near the marina. She arrived in a trench coat, looking skeptical but curious. I handed her the folder. She scanned the papers for several minutes in silence. I knew something was off, she finally whispered. "But this is fraud." "She threatened him," I said. "Used his memory issues against him. He left me all this proof. I think he wanted me to fight back." Clarissa looked up. "Why you? Why not both of us?" I hesitated. "Maybe he thought you were too close to her. Too willing to play nice." She didn't deny it. "We need a lawyer," she said firmly. "Someone who handles probate fraud." "I already called one," I admitted. "He wants to see everything. He said we might be able to freeze the assets." Clarissa nodded slowly. "Good. Because she's not walking away with our mother's house." We met the attorney, a sharp-eyed man named Mr. Caldwell, the next day. He reviewed the documents, the flash drive, and the letter from our father. "She coerced him," he said simply. "And under Georgia law, that opens the door for a contestation of the will." I exhaled. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was finally doing something. "We'll file immediately," he said. "But I need you both to be on the same page. This could get ugly." I glanced at Clarissa. She nodded. "We're in." As we left the office, I got a call from an unknown number. I hesitated, then picked up. Avery's voice. "You couldn't just leave it alone, could you?" she hissed. "You think you're going to win this? You don't know what you're starting." My blood went cold. "I know enough. You'll regret this." "I already regret trusting you," I snapped, then hung up. Clarissa raised an eyebrow. Was that Avery? She sighed. She's nervous. That means we're on to something. That night, I went through the files again. This time, slower, more carefully. I noticed a receipt for a storage unit outside Savannah. My father had signed it himself a few months before his death. It was the last receipt in the folder. Maybe there was more. Maybe the truth ran deeper than even we realized. I looked at the date, only 2 weeks before he passed. Whatever was inside, he wanted it found. And I was going to find it. The storage facility sat on the edge of a sleepy highway, half an hour outside Savannah. It looked like something out of an old movie, rows of rusted red doors, chain-link fences, and a faded sign that read Safe Keep Storage, Climate Controlled. Clarissa insisted on coming with me, even though she hated the idea of digging through old man junk. She wore oversized sunglasses and brought coffee like we were headed to a casual brunch, not the scene of a potential family scandal. This is it, I said, standing in front of unit number 42. The lock was the same brass kind as the one on the studio. My father's handwriting was on the receipt in the folder, keep safe. Important. The key clicked, and the door groaned open. The unit smelled like cedar and dust. Stacks of boxes lined the walls, each one labeled in Dad's neat block letters, Mom's art. Taxes 2005 to 2010. Photos. Correspondence. We started going through them slowly, methodically. Most of it was what you'd expect: old bills, water-stained photo albums, a few paintings of wildflowers my mother had done in her later years. But then, in a box labeled private, we found it. Inside were 2 large binders, a manila envelope, and a small red notebook. Clarissa opened the notebook first. "Is this a journal?" she asked. I nodded. It was full of Dad's handwriting, dense and urgent. Flipping through it, the entries grew more chaotic near the end. Most pages were filled with observations, suspicions about Avery, questions about withdrawals, recordings of conversations. She tells me I'm forgetful. Maybe I am. But I remember the safe code. She doesn't know I changed it. Saw her shredding something yesterday. Bank statements? I'm being watched. Even in my own house. I swallowed hard. He had known. All along. Clarissa pulled the envelope open. Inside were photos, lots of them. Avery in Dad's study. Avery at the bank. Avery photocopying papers at a FedEx. Most were time-stamped and dated, some even signed by a private investigator. "There's enough here to bury her," Clarissa muttered. "But he never went to the police," I said. "Why?" We both fell silent. Then she shook her head. Maybe he thought no one would believe him. Or maybe he didn't want the scandal. I opened one of the binders. Inside were dozens of notarized letters and statements, signed by Dad, detailing changes in his will, medical reports diagnosing him with early-onset dementia, and even instructions for what to do if the will was contested. On the last page, there was a note addressed to me. Nora. If you're reading this, it means I didn't get to fix things in time. I'm sorry. I thought I had more of it, time, I mean. I was too proud to ask for help. But you were always watching. Always careful. She fooled me, yes. But not forever. Do what you need to do. Protect the family name, and protect Clarissa. She still wants to believe the best in people. You'll know what to do. Love. Dad. I read it twice, then a third time. My chest ached. Are you okay? Clarissa asked softly. I nodded, eyes wet. Yeah. I wish he'd said this when he was alive. She placed a hand on my shoulder. Me too. We loaded the key materials into a box: journal, photos, letters, and the red notebook. Everything else we left behind. As we locked the unit back up, Clarissa turned to me. We need to bring this to Mr. Caldwell right away. This isn't just about inheritance anymore. This is a full-on fraud case. We drove straight to his office. When Mr. Caldwell saw the contents, he raised his eyebrows and leaned back in his chair. Well, Ms. Whitaker, he said to me. This changes everything. You think it's enough? It's more than enough. We're not just contesting the will now, we're opening a criminal case. Fraud, coercion, elder abuse. Clarissa flinched at the last term. I'll file the injunction today. That Lexus she's driving? We'll freeze the title. And the bank accounts. If Avery so much as tries to sell a fork from that house, we'll know. For the first time, I felt the sense of momentum, like the truth was finally tilting the scales. We walked out of the office in silence. Then Clarissa turned to me. "Do you think Dad would have been proud of this? Us teaming up, fighting back?" I looked up at the sky. It was cloudy, but a patch of blue peeked through. "I think he would have wanted us to do what's right." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Dad's voice in my head, imagining the fear he must have felt, trapped in his own mind, manipulated by someone he trusted. Someone we all trusted. I opened the red notebook again and flipped to the back. There was one more entry, almost illegible, scrawled in shaky handwriting. "The necklace. She doesn't know. It's the last piece." My heart skipped. I ran to the drawer and pulled out the gold locket. It clicked open with a soft pop. Inside, tucked behind a tiny photo of Mom, was a micro SD card. Unmarked. Hidden. Another secret. Another clue. The micro SD card sat in the palm of my hand, smaller than a dime but heavy with possibility. I stared at it for a long time before sliding it into an old card reader I'd found in the back of Dad's desk drawer. Clarissa leaned over my shoulder as the folder opened on the screen. "Encrypted files," she muttered. There were 6 video files, each named only by a date. The earliest was from 2 years ago, the latest only 6 weeks before Dad died. I clicked on the first one. The grainy footage showed the inside of Dad's study. The camera angle was odd, high up in a bookshelf, maybe. Avery sat across from Dad, smiling in that too sweet way she always did when she wanted something. "You just need to sign here," she said, sliding over a piece of paper. Dad looked confused. "Why does it say transfer of ownership?" "It's just for the car insurance, Tom," she cooed. "Standard procedure." He hesitated, then reached for a pen. The next video showed a similar setup, but this time, she was more forceful. Her tone was sharp, her smile gone. "You said you trusted me. Why are you making this difficult?" she snapped. "I just want to read it first," Dad replied, voice shaky. "That's what the lawyer's for. You don't need to understand every word." It was unbearable to watch. Clarissa had to leave the room. I stayed. I watched Avery manipulate him again and again, slipping papers in among his prescriptions, whispering threats masked as concern. On one recording, she even said, "If Nora finds out, she'll have you declared incompetent and put in a home. Is that what you want?" My stomach turned. By the time I reached the final video, my hands were shaking. It was dated 6 weeks before he died. This time, Dad was alone. He stared directly into the camera, looking frail but clear-eyed. "To whoever finds this," he began, "I hope it's Nora. I know what she's doing to me. She thinks I'm gone already, but I'm still here, some days." He paused, struggling for breath. "She wants it all. The house, the money, the studio. But she won't get it. Not if you're watching this." He held up a flash drive. "Everything's on here. Copies of the documents she forged. Audio files. Scans." I hid it behind the false wall in the studio. "It's taped inside the easel drawer." I jumped up. Clarissa looked at me like I was on fire. "We have to go to the studio. Right now." It was after midnight, but we didn't care. We drove through empty streets until we reached the art studio behind Dad's house. The lights buzzed overhead as we pushed open the back door. The easel drawer stuck at first, swollen from years of disuse. I yanked it open with both hands, and there it was. Taped to the inside wall of the drawer, a black flash drive. Clarissa let out a breath like she'd been holding it for hours. We raced home. This time, I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. Inside were everything Dad promised: PDFs of legal documents, several with clearly mismatched signatures. Audio clips where Avery practiced forging his name. A scan of a journal entry where she'd written, "He's not going to last much longer." Then it's mine. It was indisputable. We called Mr. Caldwell first thing in the morning. He met us at the courthouse within the hour, armed with all our files. Avery had no idea what was coming. By noon, a temporary restraining order had been granted, freezing all the estate assets. The police had opened a preliminary investigation. And the judge scheduled an emergency hearing for Friday. Still, I couldn't sit still. "I want to see her," I told Clarissa. She blinked. "You want to what?" "I want to see her face when she realizes she is not getting away with it." So I drove. She was at the house, watering the garden like nothing had happened. Like our father hadn't died, confused and alone while she played the doting niece with a knife behind her back. When I pulled into the driveway, she smiled. "Nora. I was just about to call. The lawyer said." "I know what you did," I interrupted, stepping out. Her smile wavered. I don't know what you're talking about. I held up a copy of the flash drive. This says otherwise. Her face turned to stone. You have no proof. I have video. Audio. Your handwriting. Your voice. You lied, Avery. She dropped the watering can. You think anyone's going to believe the daughter who left her father to rot in this place? I stepped closer. He believed in me. Even when I didn't believe in myself. You underestimated him. That was your first mistake. And your second, Clarissa said, stepping out from behind my car, was thinking we'd stay silent. Avery looked between us, two women she once thought she could control. But not anymore. Friday morning arrived like the calm before a storm. Clarissa and I stood outside the courthouse, our heels clicking on the stone steps as people shuffled inside. I clutched the leather folder containing everything, the USB, the video transcripts, the journal scans. Every lie, every forged document, exposed. My fingers trembled, but not from fear. It was something else. Maybe justice. Maybe hope. Inside the courtroom, Avery sat at the defense table, dressed in muted gray, her hair tied in a tight bun. She looked calm, but I knew her well enough to recognize the twitch in her jaw, the one she had when things weren't going according to plan. The judge entered. We rose. The hearing began. Mr. Caldwell presented our evidence with calm precision. He played a section of the final video, where my father, clear-eyed and brave, spoke directly into the camera. She won't get away with it. Not if you're watching this. You could have heard a pin drop in the courtroom. Avery's attorney tried to argue that my father had been mentally unwell, that the videos could have been manipulated, that I was just an estranged daughter trying to grab what wasn't mine. But then came the handwriting samples. The audio of Avery practicing my father's signature. The scanned journal pages in her own pen. It was over. The judge leaned forward, voice low but firm. Based on the overwhelming evidence presented, the court finds sufficient cause to suspend the will currently on file and initiate a formal probate investigation. All estate assets shall remain frozen until a new, verified will is presented. In the meantime, Miss Avery Leclerc is ordered to have no contact with the estate or its family members. Avery shot to her feet. You can't do this. I took care of him. The judge didn't flinch. This court takes elder fraud extremely seriously. Consider yourself lucky we're not issuing a warrant, yet. She was escorted out by bailiffs. Not in cuffs, yet, but her fall had begun. Outside, the air felt lighter. Clarissa and I stood on the courthouse steps as people passed by, not knowing the war that had just been fought inside. She looked at me. What now? Now? I exhaled. Now we rebuild. _ 2 weeks later, I walked through the house on Willow Lane for the first time since the funeral. It still smelled like Dad's cologne and linseed oil. Dust sparkled in the sunlight streaming through the windows. Every wall whispered memories. In the studio, I found his last canvas, still on the easel. Unfinished, but unmistakably a portrait of Clarissa and me, smiling, side by side. A note in his handwriting lay beneath it. For my girls. You were always the masterpiece. I cried then, not from grief, but from something gentler. Something like healing. The new will, which Mr. Caldwell found in Dad's safety deposit box, named me and Clarissa as co-beneficiaries. He'd changed it months before he died, quietly, legally, and without Avery's knowledge. We inherited the house, the studio, and even his tiny lakeside cabin upstate. Not because we asked for it. But because he chose to give it to us. _ In the months that followed, life found a new rhythm. Clarissa moved into the guest cottage behind the house and started a small bakery downtown. She called it the Willow Spoon, and every customer was offered a story along with their pie. I stayed in the main house. Turned Dad's studio into an art center for kids, especially those from hard places, like I once was. We named it the Thomas Hall Center for Creativity. His memory lived in every brushstroke. Avery? She disappeared from town. Word was, she'd lawyered up, trying to avoid formal charges. But the damage to her reputation was done. People no longer looked at her with admiration. Just pity, or worse, contempt. One rainy Thursday, I received a letter. No return address. No signature. Just 4 words in uneven handwriting. You still lost him. I didn't show it to Clarissa. I burned it in the fireplace. Because she was wrong. I hadn't lost him. He was in the smell of turpentine that lingered in the studio. In the way the porch floorboards creaked just so. in the echo of his laugh on warm summer nights. And most of all, in the way I'd finally remembered who I was. _ 1 year to the day after he passed, we hosted a celebration in the backyard under the old willow tree. Neighbors, friends, and even a few students came. We hung his paintings between lanterns and played his favorite jazz records. As the sun dipped low, Clarissa raised a glass. To Tom Hall. The man who taught us that love, real love, isn't about what you leave behind in a will. It's about what you plant in the people you love. Everyone raised their glasses. I looked up at the willow tree, its branches swaying like they were waving back at us. And for the first time in a long time, I felt peace. Not just justice. But something deeper. Home.